As a beginner, your Bevy project can quickly spiral into a mess, making it a nightmare to find anything. In today's video, we're going to show you how to use Rust plugins to organize your game into clean, separable files, making your project scalable and easy to manage. Let's get started. We're going to be using Nano as our text editor. Feel free to use Visual Studio as the process should be exactly the same. Next, we're going to open our directory to our project, so first we need to go to start implementing custom plugins to organize our project. We need to start by outputting the contents of our main RS. So if we go towards the bottom, we can see this is where we define our character, and we're going to create a file called player RS. The reason we're doing this is it allows you to separate the concerns and make sure that your files just aren't overloaded with crap. This makes it easy to find everything, as you can just list your files and see which one you want based off the title. So now that we have our player defined here as our function, we need to bring in Bevy, because Bevy is what brings in the materials for our custom plugins. So let's start by doing that first. So we're going to do prelude, colon, and then we start, and don't forget the semicolon at the end. Happens way too often. So let's start defining our struct. This struct is what's going to allow us to include this file in our main RS. Now let's implement the custom plugin. So you use implement, and we're going to call it, this is going to be a plugin, probably from Bevy, and then we're going to do player plugin, and then we do open bracket. Now we need to define our build function. This build function just kind of brings the app over from Bevy, which builds our program. As you'll see quickly here, we'll have to use the system, which comes from app. In a quick moment here. So we're gonna do app, and then mute. I know mute just means that it's changeable, it's not a constant. So we are changing app, so that makes perfect sense. And we're separating app, add systems. Don't forget the S at the end. And we're going to do startup. Startup means that our character is going to spawn at the beginning of the game. This function only runs once. If your character dies for whatever, you would do a update instead. And this would respawn your character again wherever the character respawns at. But you don't have to worry about this function, as it only happens once at the start. So now that we defined our custom plugin, let's exit the file. So now that we have our player file defined, let's open our main so we can get our custom plugin included. So to bring that struct over that we defined originally, this is what brings over the contents of our file. We're going to use mod player. If you want to think about C++, this is kind of like our include or library that we defined. So player defined library, and then we're going to use this one called use player, and this is going to be our plugin. So this is also like bringing an external file. It's kind of getting confusing here. So we're going to use player plugin, and then we end with a semicolon. This is all we need to do to bring in our plugin. Now we need to actually have it run in our main, because that's what runs our program. So let's start by adding a bracket here, a semicolon here, and then we're going to bring in a player plugin. So it's going to call player plugin, and then let's delete spawn character, as we have this defined in another file now. And we also need to go back to the bottom because we no longer need spawn character here. Let's just get rid of this real quick. Spawn character, and let's see if our program runs. So we're going to use cargo build. You can use cargo check, but it checks everything. And we can see our program still runs. This is perfect. Let's start by dividing the rest of our files over. So we're going to open main we're going to output the contents of main once again. And let's start next with our floor. So we're going to go to floor, and we're going to copy this, and we're going to call this next Rust file called floor.rs. I know, it's very creative. So let's copy our function we defined, and let's define our well, first we need to bring in Bevy. So we're going to call use Bevy, and then you're gonna use prelude once again. Don't forget the two double dots and the star, and then our semicolon as always. Now let's define our struct once again. This struct, as before, allows us to bring in the file. We're gonna call this floor plugin, and back to defining our plugin again. So do impl plugin, and then do floor plugin. So we're implementing a plugin for a struct, as you can see right there. Then we do open bracket for function build, and we're gonna do self and now we do app once again, so we can bring our app, mute app, and then we need open bracket, and then let's add our system to our app. So you can do add system, and then this is where we're gonna do startup, and then we're gonna spawn our floor in. So spawn floor, and an extra semicolon at the end. Please don't forget that. And then once we have this defined, this looks about correct. But we can see there's a little error here. It's always good to double check, as typing something wrong happens way too often. And let's see if our program runs. Cargo build. And you can see no issues here. As you can see, I feel like something's wrong here, but this is because we haven't brought it into our main yet. So it's not even using it. So we're gonna use mod floor and use floor plugin, and with a semicolon, and let's get rid of our floor here, as we no longer need it in our main. So now you're being exterminated, unfortunately, by floor from our main. And let's bring it to our plugin. So we're gonna do floor plugin, and let's get rid of spawn floor, as it's no longer needed. As we go along here, let's see if this builds correctly. This is pray cargo build, and you can see there's a small error here because you need to add the S always at the end. So it's gonna be app builds systems, and let's build it once again, and looks like it's perfect. Let's open our main RS one more time, or let's output the main RS. So we're cut main RS, and let's copy lights and cameras so we can get this speeded ahead. So we're gonna do nano light RS. We're gonna copy this into here, and now we're gonna do copy camera. So copy the contents of your camera, make camera its own file, camera to RS not RA. And then let's take something from our floor RS, as we already have most of what we need from here. So you're gonna copy this, what we have. So we'll re-implement our struct. So let's start with the light, and we'll just copy and paste this at the top. So you're gonna use Bevy preclude, and then you're gonna use struct light plugin instead of floor plugin. Don't forget to replace this one. And then we also need to go add systems spawn light. So that should be everything for our light. Let's get next to our camera. So nano cameras, and then we'll copy and paste this right here. This defines our struct and our custom plugin, as we're called. So this one's going to be called cameras plugin, camera plugin, and then we're going to do camera plugin again, camera plugin, and then let's spawn in our camera. So we do camera, and let's open our main file as everything should be set up. So we're first going to start by getting rid of all these other guys as they're no longer needed. We can finally clean up our main RS. So let's delete that, and then once we can also get rid of add systems. Both, well, update's gonna come in a future video, so we'll just leave that there for the moment being. So we'll delete that, and now we need to bring over our new files. So we got light, and then we have mod camera, and let's now bring in our plugin. So use light, and we're gonna use our light plugin, and then let's use our camera plugin, as you can see right here. And then let's bring them into our app, which is when our program actually runs, our Bevy game actually runs. So light plugin, and then we're gonna have camera plugin, and let's see if our program runs. It should. Let's test it out. And hell yeah, didn't mess up once on the syntax. So we do cargo run, we can see our programs run before. Now that we learned how to separate our functions into their own files, let's get into starting how to separate them into their own directories. Because as you go, your player is going to have a lot of files, and we don't want to just fill the srf directory. We want to make a directory called player or main character, whatever you like to title it. So that's the next thing we're going to do next. Alright, to get started with creating our subfolders, the first thing we need to do is create our subfolder. So we're going to make a subfolder called world. This is going to store our floor, and I think we're going to place the light in there as well. So we're going to we're going to call world, and then we're also going to need to declare a file called world.rs. World.rs is what it's going to make. It's going to tell our Rust program where our world files are going to be. So let's open this up. So when we open this up, we need to declare where our files are going to be. So you're going to do public mod, and then we're going to do floor, and now let's do our light floor light. And now that we have these defined, let's open up let's move our files. So let's move light into world, and then we're gonna move floor into world. So we have these two files moved into world. We don't need to do anything with them right now. The next thing we need to do is just open up main and tell our app where we're gonna have our new files at. So to do that, we need to include world. This is gonna bring in those public structs as we defined from earlier, and those public structs tell Bevy where the functions are gonna be at in the subfolder. So now that we have that, we need to comment out light and floor since those are no longer accessible, and we need to go to our plugins. So we know that plugins is gonna have to check the folder or file, and then it's gonna go to floor after that. And the same thing applies for the floor. It's gonna first check world, and then it's gonna go to light. And once we have that defined, we should have everything ready to go. So let's make sure this actually works. So we're gonna do cargo build and see if it runs. Alright, and that worked really well. So from what we learned today is custom plugins to create our separate files. And then the second thing we learned is how to create subfolders that we can place our separated files into. These two techniques will make your project 10 times more organized and allow you to build bigger and bigger projects without the frustration of not knowing where to find where your game logic is. This is especially useful when you're trying to fix bugs where it says a specific function but you don't even know what files, but with this type of system you'll find that right away. And thank you for watching my video today. I appreciate you watching to the end, and have a good day.